Now, capitalism surely can spread a lot of low culture around really, really fast because capitalism is efficient, okay? But that it spreads it out doesn't necessarily mean it's a cause. There have actually been capitalist societies that have had quite beautiful art and culture, okay? In fact, quite sublime art and culture. You've probably heard of one of them. Can anyone think of a capitalist society that has unbelievably renowned for its art and architecture? Florence. Florence, Italy. Did you know that Florence was a capitalist economy? Right? And it produced incredible architectural and artistic treasures. Now, the question is, and I won't get into all that, but the question is, was capitalism the cause of that art or not? It's very hard to find a corollary or correlation between art and capitalism. Now, there is one correlation between art and capitalism. You have to have money to produce beautiful things. So in one sense, there is a correlation between art and capitalism because as Florence began to develop in the beginning of the 11th century, early 1000s, and through about 1600, you had a great development of Florence. There's actually some interesting things, and I don't want to get too much into this because I'm still in the process of studying it, but you see the downturn of the Florentine economy. Also, there's some parallels with its artistic downturn as well. But Florence had a market economy, in some ways more free than ours, in some ways less free. There were guilds there, which I might talk about in a couple minutes if I have time. But you have this beautiful beautiful culture that's funded by a capitalist economy. So why is it, if we have so much money, that we produce such ugly things when in Florence they produced beautiful things? Is capitalism and markets, are they the cause? Okay? And again, this relates to the question of consumerism. Why are we buying up all of these terrible things? Now, Tocqueville worried that you would have in mass society and democracy a multitude of people all going around one another just getting vulgar and banal petty pleasures. And he thought, oh my goodness, it's going to be terrible. And then you're going to have over them this large protective state that takes away their freedom. But is that because they're stuff, or why do we want that stuff? Another question, of course, is the family. Does capitalism destroy the family? Many people are worried about family breakdown. Now, again, capitalism and markets absolutely can disrupt families. For example, you can have migration and mobility. You got to move to a new place. You leave your family and your family farm. You move to a city. You're by yourself. I mean, these things can be very serious social disruption. And I am not negating them. I'm going to try to talk about them a little bit later if I have time. But the question is, does capitalism cause it? Well, it's hard to say. If we look at pre-industrial families, Rodney Stark says that if you examine the nature of pre-industrial traditional families, he says, quote, it's often cruel and spiteful to an extent that will shock you. He argues that families, in fact, becomes more important than ever and able to provide strong emotional support in industrial societies. Alexis de Tocqueville noted that family bonds, especially between father and son, become sweeter and milder in democracy than they are in an aristocracy, in pre-industrialization, in agrarian societies. Now, he said there's some trade-offs. You lose some things and you gain some things. We also see Tocqueville comments that women in the United States married for love. So even if their marriage was rough, they were at least happy they made the free decision. Whereas opposed to in pre-industrial societies, oftentimes marriages were arranged, and not only for the upper classes. What's something kind of ironic and interesting is a lot of times marriages were economic arrangements in pre-industrial societies. Right? So we oftentimes think, well, capitalism makes everything economic. Well, not marriage, really. Most people don't marry for money. Some do, but if you're in pre-industrial societies, this is a very, very important element. So, again, if we look at cultural and family breakdown, the United States had reasonably strong family ties. We're seeing cultural and family breakdown really since the 1960s. Right? And the 1960s radicals, ladies and gentlemen, were not free market capitalists. Okay? They might have been free love, but not free markets.